This is She Creates Business, a podcast for wedding pros. Your host, Kinsey Roberts, interviews incredible women in the wedding industry who are making their mark and creating success on their terms. Join the conversation.
Hello, and welcome to episode 106 of She Creates Business, a podcast for wedding pros. This is your host, Kinsey Roberts. Thanks so much for being here today. Looking forward to sharing my guest, Emily Sullivan, with you today. This was a really practical and informative chat, and Emily is so passionate about this topic, and I could just kind of hear it coming through her voice. So I'm going to tell you more about her in just a second, but just quickly, I want to remind you that this is another episode that I recorded a couple of months ago. So if there's any weird audio issues or deprecated dates, I apologize in advance for that. You know that I don't take that stuff too seriously, and this is real life, so I apologize in advance, but honestly, the interview is still amazing, and the audio quality is still really good, so don't worry about it, and I hope you'll take a listen anyway. Just like to give that disclaimer so people aren't like, oh my gosh, did you know you didn't edit out this part? Yes, I did. Guys, Emily Sullivan believes that the wedding planning process should be both fun and stress-free. A Southern girl at heart, she loves the hospitality aspect of wedding planning and aims to make you and your guests feel both comfortable and welcome in the city of New Orleans. She loves the city and showcases her love for it in each wedding that she creates. With over 11 years in the industry and 500 plus weddings under her belt, she has the experience and relationships needed to make your wedding day the best. She focuses on customization and guest experience every step of the way. Emily is also the inaugural president of the New Orleans WIPA chapter and has been featured in publications like Brides, Gray Likes Weddings, The Knot, and more. She is a sought-after national speaker with recent and upcoming engagements including the special event NACE Wedding Wire World and Wedding MBA. So today we are talking about kind of a lot of things actually, but the overall topic is truly building the wedding career that you want. And we dig into what that looks like and how you can do it and the different aspects of our businesses that play into doing that. So without further ado, here is my interview with Emily Sullivan from EmilySullivanEvents.com. Emily, welcome to the show.
Hi, Kinsey. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I am so pleased to have you. And as I mentioned offline, I'm really looking forward to digging into this topic. We're chatting today. Well, we're chatting about a variety of things, but we're chatting today about really transitioning in your wedding business, what that looks like, why it's okay to do that, and getting down to the nitty-gritty of kind of building the team that you want, designing the career that you want, and whatever else comes up, because I have a lot of thoughts as soon as we get talking. But yeah, I read your professional bio there at the top of the show, as I always do, but I would like for you, just in your own words, to briefly tell us who you are and what you're doing in the industry right now.
So I am located in New Orleans, Louisiana, as you mentioned, and my specialty is actually destination New Orleans. And so while I dabble in other things when certain opportunities come up, our specialty is definitely showing off our city and inviting people to come here to get married. So destinations occasionally in other places, but really focusing heavily on New Orleans as our primary market.
That's great. And you find that it's mostly, or destination New Orleans, so it's mostly folks who are not from New Orleans.
Yeah. I mean, we have clients from all over the world right now, actually.
That's so neat.
Coming into New Orleans. A lot of people don't consider us or haven't thought of us as a destination city, but right after Hurricane Katrina, we really started to grow, and we're now in number 2 spot for destination events.
Whoa, I had no idea.
Yeah, we have a huge market here for weddings.
That's awesome. Well, and I can see why. It's such a cool city.
It is, and it's so easy to travel to. Guests love it. It's almost like a vacation. So yeah, it's really gaining popularity every year.
I wonder, do you find that you have, when it comes to a destination wedding, do you have, I guess maybe it varies. I'm always interested to know are they bigger weddings or are they smaller weddings because they're all traveling? What does that look like?
Well, it's kind of a nice mix of both, honestly. Sometimes, we have larger events. We did an Indian wedding recently that had 750 guests, primarily destination. And then we actually just launched last year a new company called Intimate Weddings by Emily, where we do those smaller intimate weddings and elopements. And we're seeing that business really take off this year as well. So averaging around 30 guests, but everything that you'd want your larger wedding to be. So not really sparing expense and really having all of the same experiences, but just wanting to share it with that core group of people.
Oh, I love that. That's really neat. And so I want to dig into how you got there. But before we do that, we need to go back and we need to talk about how you got into the industry. You used to be a makeup artist.
I did. I was a makeup artist. I worked for the Estee Lauder companies for prescriptives specifically, and that's what brought me to New Orleans originally. And I, back the year after Katrina in 2006, I got pregnant with my oldest son, who's now 11, and I just knew I wasn't really going to be able to travel anymore and take on the positions that I wanted to grow with that company. And so I just kind of was like, I think I'll do makeup for weddings while I figure this out. And so I started doing makeup. And then someone said, you seem really organized. Have you ever thought about doing day of coordination? Would you do it for me? And I said, okay, I will. And it was just a really good fit. And I think just because hospitality, I always tell people, is my spiritual gift. It's just something that I'm naturally good at. Yes. And so once I got started, just through word of mouth, it just kind of started getting more here and there. And by the next year, we were almost completely booked.
Oh my goodness. That's so brilliant. Well, and as a makeup artist, I mean, I hear it in your voice. You are just so naturally hospitable. And as a makeup artist, you're talking to people all day.
Yes.
And that's a very intimate experience.
Totally.
Do you feel that way?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm a people person. And so I don't have to really work hard at getting to know people. And relationships is one of the things I love most about wedding planning, and why I think it was such a good fit. And really why we limit what we do in my office is because we want to get to know you and we want to kind of go through the process with you. So we actually don't even do day of coordination anymore because we don't feel like you get our best value or experience when we do that. But we do a different version of it. But our goal really is to kind of get to know our clients and develop that relationship so that we can speak for you, because every client's different.
That's right. So let's dig into your history as a makeup artist, because I want to talk about transition. You and I were kind of chatting about this offline, where I feel like I've had a lot of colleagues in the industry and friends in the industry who are in the process of transitioning or want to transition, but it's a scary thing.
It's very scary.
You made a huge transition. So you actually had a storefront as a makeup artist with employees and the whole bit. Can you talk to us about that business and what it looks like?
So we, at one point, once I started event planning, we didn't give up makeup right away. Like, I'm still a makeup girl. I'm kind of a skincare guru. I still love doing makeup. I don't do it professionally anymore. And you can't hire me, but I still like to do it for myself and for fun. And so it wasn't something that we were just like, oh, we're going to give this up. We just started to add on more things. And so for a few years, we continued to do makeup and loved it, but had a very large team. And I just started to feel like maybe it was too much to manage, and you kind of have to pick and choose where, we're a business. You have to pick and choose where you're going to make the most money, first of all. And when I really started to ask those questions of why was I still doing makeup, because we continued to do it as a business for a long time after I personally gave it up. So I wasn't really a makeup artist anymore, and I didn't come to your event. People from our team did. And I started to think that maybe I was doing it just because I have this goal of like creating as many jobs as possible, but I really wasn't making any money from it. And so, I had to take a really hard look at it and say, what am I doing? Am I making money from this? Or is the stress of the scheduling and, all of these things that went along with makeup, is it really worth it in the end? And we came to the conclusion that it really wasn't. So we downsized initially. So we just took away some of those makeup artists and hairdressers, and then just started to do limited events, because I think at one given point around 2009, we did something like 300 makeup events in a year.
Wow.
And that is just a lot of managing of times and people and showing up in details, and even more so than planning, I think.
Yes.
And so that just kind of gradually we downsized, and then we said, you know what, this is just not smart business. We have to transition.
Wow. Was that, you agreed when I said it's scary to transition. How long were you thinking about that? And, from the ideation of, we might need to transition or downsize until you made the leap, what did that process look like? Can you hear me, Emily? I just lost you. If you can hear me, I can't hear you. Are you back?
I'm here. Yes. I'm like, where'd she go?
Yep. That's okay. We're just going to keep going. I'm going to write this edit spot down. Let's see. Edit 7 minutes. And I don't know. I feel you could probably hear me the whole time. Is that right?
I couldn't. No, I couldn't.
You could not. Okay. Mm-mm. So we'll just start with my last question, and then we'll just pick it up from there, and I'll cut out this whole part.
Okay.
Cool. So my last question was, so you just mentioned, or when I mentioned how difficult it can feel to transition, you mentioned that, or I guess my question is, from the ideation of, we may need to transition or at least downsize, from that idea to when you actually did it, how long was that period?
Oh, goodness. It was longer than I would want it to be, looking back at it as a more mature business owner, but it was very difficult to make that decision and to take away the jobs of those people. Yeah. I knew that some of them depended on that for their livelihood. And so it was a very difficult decision for me. And it's always it's always scary to give up any revenue. And particularly for me, because I am a single parent and my business from the beginning has been about supporting my children in a way that makes them not really have the same experience as what's typical of a single parent. So it's always been about work hard, provide for my children. And so saying I'm giving up this revenue that makes us this, X amount of dollars a year is scary. And you have to kind of trust that your other business is going to pick up for it.
Yes. Excellent point. So once you downgraded that makeup business, and did you sell the storefront, or what did that look like?
I didn't. No, we just closed it. And I think I told you this earlier, but I kind of refer to it as like the great breakdown of 2010, because it just got to a point where it was too many people, too many employees, too many people, too many schedules, too many events, and none of it was really paying off the way it should. And I know this is something we all feel at certain times in the wedding industry, is I was just burnt out, and I was spinning my wheels doing these things that in the long run didn't matter. And so I had to basically just stop and regroup, rebrand, decide how I was going to work from then on. And I did that with just myself and one assistant as we kind of worked out of my house for a long time, actually. And then I just gradually built that back up again to what I wanted my business and also my personal life to look like.
Yes, the burnout is so real sometimes.
It is so real. It is tough. I mean, I wanted to walk away completely, but and I think that's what happens when we're always forcing things and working hard at things that really aren't paying off business wise.
Oh my gosh, yes. I have like Jesus emoji hands.
Right.
Why do we do that? I feel like sometimes and I respect so much that you just you left that business. It wasn't like, oh my God, I need to give this to someone or sell it to someone or do this big thing with it, because the peace of mind and the weight off your shoulders to just let it go and let it, holistically leave your sphere of influence was what worked for you. And I love that.
Yeah, it wasn't worth it. And it was also very personal to me. And I think as creatives, we're very protective of our businesses and our time and all of these things. And so for me, it just wasn't worth it to see that through. It was just like, let's just call it a day. And I think another thing for creatives that's particularly hard is that we don't like to fail. We're very competitive. Yes. And so that period of time where I was transitioning was almost like, am I failing? Because then I'm just going to work harder and keep trying it. But it really was a very mature business decision and probably had come along with my age at that point to just say, you know what, that this is enough.
Yes. So we've gotten rid of the makeup business and now, well, not completely, but we've really transitioned out of it. And you began working from home as a planner, or kind of focused more on that side of your business because it was already in existence, but just with one assistant from your house. What did you start taking on more weddings right away, or was that a slow burn? Can you tell
No,
me
I
about
didn't
that?
initially. I
Okay.
really kind of pulled back. But it took a period of, I would say probably 8 months to a year, where I was building a new website. I was rebranding. I was changing our packages, kind of figuring out, what direction I wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was a really important time for my business overall, because honestly, and this is a good problem, I guess, but I grew so fast in the beginning. I wasn't prepared. I didn't spend time in my business thinking about how I wanted my business to look and what my goals were. I was almost just in survival mode all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, we have all these events, so we have to do them. I've taken on all this and I can't say no. And, it took me a period of 5 years or so to learn that I can say no. I don't have to do everything. I don't, I don't constantly have to chase business. It's going to come to me. It's just a period of building that back up again. And so that's what happened. We took some time and then just looked at everything as a whole to do some goal setting that we hadn't done before, and honestly just recover emotionally.
Yes.
On a personal level. I wasn't in a good place.
How did you work through that? Those feelings. Those are big feelings. How did you work through those and to come out on the other side to say, okay, I'm ready to have another business?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a quitter. Number one, I'm always gonna, and I just told my friend this, who was thinking about opening her own business, and I was telling her, like, that's what differentiates real business owners, is that you never give up. You have challenges every single day, but you don't ever give up. And those are the people that over the long term build healthy businesses. So it really has been trial and error and learning from my mistakes. And so that's what I tried to do. I just tried to look forward. And I mean, mentioning my kids again, and I know I've told you this, but my kids are important. And I wanted a particular lifestyle for them. I wanted to be able to give them time and be home with them and all of these things that single mothers can't normally do. And so I didn't want to go back to a 9-to-5 job, or a job where I worked on like shifts, or, couldn't control my own schedule. And so that just motivated me to overcome it, I think.
And we've talked about this a little bit. I also have 2 little boys, and and I'm not a single parent, and so I know I have a lot of I have more resources, or maybe, different resources. And I just feel like it's always in our mind, whether we are single or whether we have a partner, whatever it is. But I still feel like the mom, has to make those sacrifices a lot of the time, or those decisions rather, maybe not sacrifices, for, okay, how can I spend the most time with my kids, but I still want to use my talents and gifts and build something for myself.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's hard. And honestly, that's still a challenge I have today.
Yeah.
I was talking to my mentor recently, and someone who I kind of have a spiritual conversations with, and just telling her I felt like I was at a place where I need to simplify again, and just figure out what's important to me. And that is something that as you're growing in any business, you're always going to have to do, because more opportunities come up. I'm getting weddings I don't want to turn down because they have great budgets or they're at great venues, and I like the people, and so I want to do all these weddings. And now I've added on speaking to that, and so speaking 5 to 6 times a year in other places, and having to travel without them. And so I think that's an ongoing conversation that you have to have with yourself, almost, and I don't even do it yearly, I probably do it quarterly, is how are these things impacting my business, and is it worth my time? And is this overall in the scheme of what I want my life to look like?
That's very self-aware. Do you feel like your many years of experience have helped you come to this place, or how do you recommend that even new business owners? I think it's so important to, one of the things that you talk about and can speak so eloquently on is really designing a career that you want. Do you feel like that just comes with time, or is it okay for new businesses and new business owners? I've owned a venue. We've been in the process really for 2 years, just over 2 years. But we just opened last year. But I have these huge feelings around designing the venue and the venue business that we really want. What are your recommendations for people who are just getting started? Because that's the way I feel.
Yeah, I think it's easier to look back on it, having been in the business for 12 years, and say, I would do things this way. But there were such feelings of excitement when it was first starting of, oh, I'm getting clients and, I'm busy and I'm doing these things. And I think even going into it, I kind of thought that you had to be busy to be successful, like, oh, I have to be busy. I have to be on the phone. I have to have appointments. This is what that looks like when you're truly, successful. And now I define my success in a different way. And I don't really hold myself to the standards that everyone else does. Now, what I can say is that I hope, and we hope as a team, that our clients still have this amazing experience with us and that we're really into the details. But we also discuss things like boundaries and, at what point it becomes too much. And I think for beginners, it's the most important thing to really work on your business, to take time out, to take goal planning days, to take financial days, to take planning days where you're not just answering emails and doing phone calls, but where you're really setting the foundation for what your business will look like going forward.
Mm-hmm. When did you start doing that for your own businesses?
Oh, goodness. I'm still learning all the time. I mean, I don't think I ever stopped learning, but it definitely started in 2010 with the store closure and just, what I wanted it to be like and what I wanted to offer. And then again, my life really changed a year and a half ago because I started homeschooling, and that kind of just, rocked everything.
Yes.
And so then it's like, we have to revisit this again, and we have to see what team members are doing certain things and who can, have more accountability in our office and things like that. And so that has been an ongoing process, and I honestly think it never ends.
Agreed. I'm now, you said homeschooling, and I'm like personally interested in that. So now I have all these questions. But
I know I'm a huge homeschool advocate. I really do love it. But wow, it is it rocked my world a little bit. So.
That's huge. Okay, and how many kids do you have, Emily? 2, right?
I have 2.
That's
yes,
right.
I have an 11-year-old and a 4-year-old.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so little squishies, just love it. Well, tell me about, so you've said a couple of things, we talked about how you started the wedding planning business, from your home with one assistant, but now you've said, the growth and you said the team, and I think you've said the office a couple of times. So have you expanded out of your home? It sounds that way.
Yeah. So we went back, we went to an office 3 years ago, about 3 years ago. And it was just a small office. And in the meantime, we actually transitioned again, and I bought one of the local designer linen companies. And so we actually do in-house designer linens now. And so we transitioned this past year by moving to a warehouse where we work out of that warehouse. So now we have team members who are like, we have a manager who manages linens and decor and setup and those types of things, more production. And then I have a full-time assistant who just works on planning with me. Mm-hmm. And then we have an event staff. So we have about 6 to 7 people that just work events and event managers. And then we have a social media person. So there's a good bit of us now.
How did you get up you're not a quitter. We definitely know that. But how did you kind of get up that courage or to hire on people again? I mean, you were managing a huge team before, so I know it was probably like riding a bike, but that's still a big deal.
Well, it looks very different than it did before, though. And I think, again, I was too friendly with my employees in the beginning. I cared about them personally to the point where I couldn't make good business decisions. And now it looks a lot different. And I'll give you an example. Our social media marketing person came on last June full time. And so her job was to do marketing and to do social media and to do like real weddings and things like that, but also to assist with planning and work on events. And we really, over the course of 6 months, we're both like, planning's not a good fit. And so having the courage to have that conversation immediately instead of letting it dwindle was huge. We just addressed it. And I said, I'm not really feeling like planning's working out. And she's like, I'm so glad you said it. It's not. So we reevaluated that position. And in January, she became part-time doing social media. So I think you always have to look at your team and be sure that you have them in the right positions. They are not going to be successful in jobs when it's out of their comfort zone. They each have to work and feel successful in whatever area you're putting them in. But if you keep asking things of them that's not in their personality or in their wheelhouse to do, they're never going to be successful at it.
Oh, agreed. 100%. How do you train your employees and the people who work for you? Do you have a system and a process? I'm guessing you do.
I do, but the weird part about the positions is that they're all different positions. So our most recent position that we filled just about 2 months ago, we replaced my full-time assistant, and we did go through an onboarding process with her where, these are the things that are important. This is what we want to work through. And we kind of took it week by week, starting with what's most important. The thing about wedding planning, though, is you kind of just have to get your hands dirty. It's really hard to train someone to know what to do without actually practicing it. So, beyond what our systems are and our technology and the tools that we use, you really just have to get out there and go for it and kind of, learn again from your mistakes or watch the other people on our team who know what they're doing. So that one of the things that we've done is just pair up new people with older people and say, okay, these events, you just shadow them, just see what they do, see how they problem solve. And then it, from there, addressing it. And I think having a review system is really important where you're in conversation with your employees and you're saying, okay, this is what I find that is going really well. And it seems like you're really thriving here. But, what do you feel like? And not avoiding that conversation or being, again, too busy to focus on what's important.
Okay, I love this. Tell us more about what you mean by a review system. That this is for your employees.
Yes.
Okay, and you do this, is this like on a consistent basis? Tell us how you do this.
Well, it's on a consistent basis for those who are staying in the same position, but it looks more like one-on-one meetings. So for instance, last week, one of my part-timers came in and she and I sat down for an hour and we looked at what her goals are for the position, what my goals are, and then we came up with a goal sheet for spring together. And so it's just analyzing what we've done so far and what we'd like to see being done differently, and then putting those goals on paper. I'm just a huge believer that you cannot reach goals if you don't write them down and have some accountability for them.
Yes. Do you find that this help? I feel like this really can help. What I found interesting by what you just said is that you asked what her personal goals are for her position. So like, what do you want to get out of this? How will this help you grow? Here's what I want to see. And then how can we come together and marry those to make you really excel and achieve, but also serve the business? I feel as if, is this something that has kind of just come over time?
It is. And I think that I think that you have to give your employees some ownership because, again, it's not us as the owners who are getting burned out from doing these events over and over and over again. It's them as well. And so giving them some ownership and some accountability and just letting them feel like they're a part of the bigger picture, I think helps with that because then they feel connected to it in a different way. If they're just doing my list and my to-do list.
Yes, I'm just writing this down because I really want to make sure I touch on this in the show notes. What do you find? What are your kind of top 2 to 3 tips for women who are coming up in the wedding industry? They want to be successful. They have the knowledge. They're doing great things, but they really want to take it to that next level, so that they can feel successful in their own right and have that business that's really serving them financially, but also being personally fulfilling.
Goodness. And again, these are some things that I still deal with. I don't think it's ever anything that we ever overcome. I think it's constantly evolving. But for me, I would say set boundaries early on. Wedding business has a way of just taking you over if you let it. And that's not the way any of us want to live. And you will burn out eventually. And so I would say setting those boundaries early on and really kind of sticking to them. For me, it's like not responding to text messages and not taking phone calls after a certain time, things like that. It's also, I think, really important to know your worth and to ask for what you're worth. And that was a long time coming for me too, where I just wanted to price myself within the market. But we're at the point where I know the service that we're giving to people, and I know that it's a really above and beyond. And so being able to say no to some things that come along, and know that it's going to be made up, by these other, not larger events, but just not having to take all of these small events to make up for one large event. So knowing what you're worth financially for your package, knowing where to price your package. And that's always evolving for us as well, because you can't price yourself out of the market. You have to be competitive, but you also have to be able to do the number of events and make the money that you on paper need to make.
Yes, agreed. I feel like sometimes that is just, that's ever evolving, because there's people who come on the market, they also change their packages, or even they change their service offerings, your business is a perfect example. You've been in the industry for years as a makeup artist, and then also did some coordination, and then transitioned to just doing the planning, no longer doing the makeup. And so I feel like that's all a consideration for people who are also in your market, because it's not just like, oh, it's a brand new planning company. It's actually this person with 12 years of experience,
Right.
Interesting. So, I would love to just kind of wrap up here. Speaking of having 12 years of experience in the industry, as we kind of wrap up, I would love for you to touch on kind of your best tips for helping manage the different personalities that we're all going to encounter in the industry, since we work with so many different vendors, so many different couples, different personalities and different needs and wants. How have you found the best way to kind of manage and successfully work with different personalities in your career?
For clients?
Yeah, let's touch on clients, and then let's touch on vendors.
I'm from the South, and I always say that you catch more flies with honey. And that's kind of always been my approach to working with vendors. I'm always going to give you the benefit of the doubt. I'm always, as the leader of this team that we're all on to execute the event, going to be sure that my vendors are taken care of. So people love working with me for that reason. They know I'm going to give them all the information they need in a timely manner. They know I'm a problem solver. They know I'm going to fix things. They know I'm going to have dinner for them or have green rooms for them. Like, they know that they're going to feel very appreciated when they work with me. And so that once they work with us once, it's kind of like, we want to be on your list. We definitely want to work with you again. What we're seeing in our market is that there are so many new vendors, and that is where the challenge has come along with new vendors not really understanding. I don't know that there's a name for it, but I want to call it kind of like wedding etiquette, of how we treat each other and what we do. And for instance, tagging everybody in social media that works together. And I think sometimes, and I'm actually the WIPA president in New Orleans. And one of the reasons I started doing that is because I feel so strongly about growing up our market and really educating those that don't know, because anybody can open a business and get started, but you really need to be educated on events and how that happens. And so having conversation with vendors afterwards, and trying to help them grow and explain to them, maybe what has happened. But I always tell my clients, and this is probably something I shouldn't be saying in a podcast, but I am as nice as possible to people, but I will eat your face off if you don't do your job, because it's a reflection of me. And so I think people kind of know that, they know that I will call you out immediately. And I won't let things slide to the point that it can't be fixed, I guess is the point. So if someone is doing an event with us and it's not going the right way, or let's just say recently I had a photographer who I emailed and I said, here's, the overall schedule. This is what I'm thinking. I'd like to discuss it with you so that we can put it together for other vendors and then walk through it with the client. And I do that as a service to photographers, because I feel like as the creative, they really need to have some say in the timeline, and each one of them is different. So that's where I usually start my timeline. Well, this particular photographer, instead of responding to me, sent out an entirely new email to the client with all of these to-dos, like you need to check your transportation and send me the timeline, and you need to send this to your planner. And I'm like, no, I just did that for you. You didn't need to contact the client. And so I just immediately got him on the phone and said, why did you do that? That, number one, it makes me look like I'm not doing my job. And number two, I had just sent you all of this information, and they're like, well, it's just our standard procedure. We do that for everybody. And my point was, you don't need to do that for planner clients, because we're doing that. Okay. So just maybe, and I think the next time we worked with them, that's not going to happen again, but not being afraid to deal with issues. I think when you let things fester is when it really starts to get hard and get out of control. You just have to confront it. And I've learned that the hard way. Meet it head on.
I like the way you said you always give the other vendors the benefit of the doubt first, but you're not afraid to communicate with them.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Oh my God. Okay. I feel like I could talk to you forever. I won't, because I promised it would be 30 minutes. But as we wrap up here, Emily, you just shared so much. I have a page full of notes here, but is there anything that you would just say to the planners, photographers, venue owners listening just a word of advice or a word of encouragement to send them on their way into this 2018 season?
I would just say keep it all in perspective. For me, I work to live. Like, this is my job and I'm good at it and I want to be successful, but ultimately I don't define my entire life by this. And I think that's so important, particularly in our industry of creatives where it can just become all consuming. So, I recommend taking time for yourself and just taking time to grow your business and focus on things that are important and not letting busy season catch up with you to the point that you don't do the things that are really important. And in our office, and if you've ever heard me speak before, it's one of the things I always talk about, but we actually have a sign that says, don't let the urgent take away the important. And we're in a business of urgency where, the next event, we have an event, a Thursday wedding tomorrow. We have events on Saturday. We have 3 events next week, but we can't let that take away ultimately what the foundation of our business is really about.
Oh my gosh, yes. I cannot think of a better way to end a podcast. Emily Sullivan, thank you so much for being here. It was truly a pleasure and an honor to have you.
Thank you.
You are welcome. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to She Creates Business. Please take a minute and head to iTunes to leave an honest review so we can help more wedding pros find the show.